So today I will like to give you a sense of how I, as an African first, and second as a researcher, think African countries can capitalize on their relationship with China. So in a way, even though my research and my findings and my even research question may be, I recognize, a little bit biased. They are based on data and on fact, and I'm looking forward to sharing, these findings with you. So, how I will organize this seminar? First, I will like to give you the major developments regarding Africa-China relation, but I will be focusing mainly on economic relation, even though that relation includes political, military, and various part of the development field. But for the sake of this seminar, I will mainly focus on economic relations. The second aspect of this presentation will be on proposing, let's say, proposing strategy to me, how African countries can take fully advantage of their relation with China. And in the third part, I will specify on which aspect I think they can, leverage this relation, and also why I do think that this particular topic could be a value added for African countries. So please, if you have questions along my presentation, you can stop me, and I'll be more than happy to clarify if you need clarification. So beforehand, I will give you a little bit of background on why and how I got into this topic of China Africa. Maybe by understanding where I'm coming from, you may understand where I'm going and why I have this line of research and these findings. So, like I was saying in my introduction, I started being interested in economic development when I was an undergrad. And by the time I got in a master program, I did in France. So I did my study in France, in Paris. To validate the master, you have to do an internship that actually give you the full credit for you to validate the master. So since I was interested in economic development, and at that time I took a class called Economy of China, I got interested by China economists. And I approached my professor and asked him if, at the time he was working at Agence Française de Développement, so I asked him if he was looking for an intern. He said, okay, what do you have? What's your value added you want? And I say, okay, I'm passionate, I'm young, and I can spend all night long doing research for you, and I can bring something new on the table. And he said, okay, we have this topic on China Africa, will you be interested? And I say, oh, China, I like Africa, I'm from Africa, so that's a good match. I'm sure that I will bring something at the table. So I did an internship at Agence Française de Développement, which is, the main body that actually oversee and manage the aid flow in France. So I was in charge of looking at China presence in Africa. That's a very large topic. I mean, Africa, there are more than 50 countries in the continent. And he said, okay, so it was in around 2006, 2007. So It was a very new topic, and traditional partner, which I call traditional partner, like France, Germany, the United States, they were having this negative, if I may say, negative view on China-Africa relation, because it was something new. So 8 years before, China has started his FOCAC, so the forum of their annual forum with a bunch of African countries. So France, the France government was interested in knowing more about that topic, because what they actually have was covering from the media. And you can, sometimes media, I'm not the one saying that, but you can have fake information from the media based on what the president is saying. So they were actually looking at, what was the real, what was China doing in those countries. So at that time, I have 15 countries. I took 15 countries from the whole, from the continent, trying to mix the francophone country, but also lusophone, so Portuguese-speaking country, and also Anglophone-speaking country, to see, if there were any pattern. And at the end of the internship, my main conclusion was that China was doing nothing right in Africa. They were not respecting the rules of law. In terms of employment, they were bringing their prisoner. I mean, it was a very negative view of the relation. And as an African, and also as a developmentist, and as a passionate in what I'm doing, I wasn't satisfied, because I was like, there is something missing in the picture. The fact that I was interning at Agence Française de Développement, and that they have these questions that they were looking, specifically because they wanted to know what was wrong in this relation. So most of my conclusion was bad. And at the end of the master, I decided to deep more, to look more. What was China doing in Africa? I wanted to have the real picture of what they were doing. So I decided to, go over to do a PhD. It took me 5 years. I know it's long, but interesting. And I will first like to share, all my findings over those 5 years, and tell you, going forward, what I'm looking in my research. So what are the major developments regarding Africa-China? So in my dissertation, what I actually did, since during the PhD, during the internship, I didn't have the latitude that I wanted. I didn't have the freedom to ask the question that I wanted to ask. So in my dissertation, it was free flow. I could ask whatever I wanted to ask, and try to find some justification, some proof to make my points. So what I actually did, I took a bunch of countries, because I was specifically looking at specific questions, because the media. So what I did is I took all the stereotypes on China-Africa relation, and I was trying to justify them, or to say that no, this is right, and no, this is wrong. So what I did, I took. So in my sample, I have 7 countries: Mali, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, Ethiopia. I think I said Ethiopia, Cameroon. So I took a very large sample, to me, very large sample of country. The second thing that I wanted to test was to see if China was only going in resource-rich country. So the reason why that's the reason why I put Nigeria, because it's considered as a resource-rich country, and I balanced that with Mali. maybe that's the reason why Professor Dulo thought that I was coming from Mali. So because Mali is a very agrarian, agricultural-based, country. So I wanted to see, okay, if there is a pattern in the way China decide to go in any African country. So, and also when I was looking at China presence in Africa, I was also interested by the nature of their relationship. So basically looking at the foreign aid, trade, and investment, because what the media has been portraying was that um, China is saying they're doing a win-win situation, but it may not actually be a win-win situation. They are just, dampening the African market with um, bad quality goods, and they are in return taking natural resources from those countries without bringing a real value added on the table. So I wanted to just to see all those facts.
Quick question. Your second point, you make it a very strong statement, and I was wondering why would you not say is China influenced by the presence and so on? Question mark. Why do you state it the way you did?
I stated the way I did because after the research, it comes.
So that's a result of your research.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, because what I one.
I mean, certainly at the beginning, as you pointed out, you yourself were a skeptic.
Yes,
and so
then
the issue was to essentially try to find out whether this prior bias
yes,
could be validated by
yes,
your research.
yes,
And then you decided no.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the fact that China was strongly, present in Mali, and we will say that later in the, agricultural sector. Basically, they're not, oriented toward only resource-rich country, but they are expanding their presence in Africa. The one of the major development is also regarding the one China policy. Regarding this aspect, what I've found is that so there are only 3 countries, that recognize Taiwan, and what I've noticed is that even though China may not directly help, those countries in investing in those countries, they do have trade relation with those countries. So the one China policy, it's debatable. It's not a very strong, case where they will say, okay, we do not cooperate with all those countries that may recognize Taiwan. They do have economic relation with those countries. Questions so far? Nope. Okay. So now going on my main finding. Here, I would like to first of all give you a sense of what I have noticed over the year. I will start with the right-hand side of this slide. I think at certain point over my research, it was important to pay attention to the rhetoric, to the vocab, because China, when they deal with African countries, they use very positive words like solidarity, friendship, mutual benefit, win-win situation. So they have this perception where by showing the positive side of the relation, African countries or African government may be, straightforward in the negotiation process and so on. So the comparison I made with traditional partner being, France, Germany, and the US, is that with the traditional partner, the language was more paternalistic in the way where usually France was taking sanction with some African countries that were not respectful of human rights or that have some political instability and so on. So that was one aspect that actually strengthened the reason why African countries were most likely to have any type of political, any type of economical relation with China, because they were having an alternative based on the French, if I may say, the friendship. But we'll see later what that friendship actually hide, because over this solidarity and friendship and win-win situation, there is a hidden hidden objectives. So then I'll come back to the left-hand side. So I focus my research on trade, investment, and aid. And remember, I said that I undertaken this research because I was trying to look at good good aspect of China-Africa relation. So with the trade, I have noticed that the Chinese were, trading with all African countries. For some resource-rich countries, it was, it was stronger than, other other agrarian, if I may say, country. But in the whole, the flow of trade between China and African countries was at the growing path. Then I took the case of investment. So the idea with investment, I was looking at FDI, joint venture, basic, investment, just a little farmer or entrepreneur, simple Chinese entrepreneur going to open a business in Mali or opening a business in Kenya, and trying to see both at the macro level, at the micro level, and at the meso level, what was the overall impact regarding the investment. With the aid, I somehow focused most of my research in the aid system, because at that time, one of the stereotype was that China is giving a lot of loan to African countries, and this is threatening their debt sustainability. If you guys are aware with the concept of debt sustainability, so basically, I was very interested because I wanted to know if in reality, the fact that China was giving those loans to African countries could affect their debt sustainability, because it was one of the major argument advanced by the IMF or the World Bank and all those strong economists coming from the field. So that was for the case of aid. So basically, looking at the trade situation, investment situation, and aid situation, I was somehow able to draw out the positive aspect of this relation. Going on the trade and investment, what I was looking at is see if there were any transfer technology, because that's the way I figure out that could be a value added for African countries. So basically, with the trade, what I was looking at is the content of manufactured goods that African countries, I took the case of Cameroon, the content, the technology content of manufactured goods that Cameroon was importing from China, and how these goods was used within the country. If it was intermediate goods or it was finished good, and how they actually use that good to strengthen their economy. Then I had another point that I was looking, when I was looking at the China-Africa relation, was to see the. I wanted to see if I was the only one to think that maybe there are good things from this relation. So looking at what single people, single individual, inhabitant think about that China-Africa relation. So basically, there is a recent, it was in 2016, opinion survey that have shown that the majority of respondents in African countries view China favorably. So basically, I'm not the only one. So somehow, we cannot say that the line is, either black or white, or black um, or white. But at least people are willing to see positively this relation. I'm not saying that there isn't any negative aspect, but at least when you're able to see the positive aspect in any type of relation, you can then focus on the negative and try to leverage that. So the main factors that contributing most to the positive image of China was investment in infrastructure and business. Yes, African countries are in need of infrastructure, and you may see that you will see later in my presentation that I am somehow very biased when I'm talking about no, not biased, I'm very critics when I'm talking about African government because of their lack of accountability, lack of responsibility. But investment in infrastructure was a good aspect because most of African countries need those investments to be able to leverage their economic situation. Cost of Chinese products. The cost of Chinese products, it's also part of the factor that contribute to a negative image. That's, quite contradictory because somehow you have a side of the population who see that okay, the fact that China may have very cheap goods that at least give them the right, or that at least give them the accessibility to those goods that they were not able to enjoy because products coming from, let's say, France or Italy or US, even though they are from good quality, may not be accessible to the to the basic inhabitant. The third one was support in international affairs and non-interference in the international affairs. When we're looking at factors contributing to the negative image, so we have quality of Chinese products, taking jobs or business from locals, which I also find that aspect in my research. Extraction of resources from Africa, and land grabbing by Chinese individuals. So I would like to spend just 3 minutes on the last 2 points on factor that contributing to a negative image. So this was a perception coming from the population. It's opinion survey. So basically, it's covering 36 African countries. So basically, that's the perception coming from the population. When I recently did a research on the land grabbing phenomenon in Africa, and basically I was looking at the Malian case one more time to see, because there were this rumor, if I may say, rumor that China was, having considerable, land in the north of Mali, and the population was very, very. They were negatively affected by this aspect. When I tried to look what was the real sense on this land grabbing, it appeared that it wasn't really a land grabbing. It was the government, the Malian government, that was giving legal authorization to the Chinese investor to use that land. So for the population, the villagers, when they're not aware, they don't have this sense of knowledge. They may think that China or Chinese are just, taking ownership of their land. What I've what I've also seen in the land grabbing phenomenon in the case of Mali was that since the Malian government was the one who actually gave the right to Chinese entrepreneur to use that land, there were also the Malian government was also supposed to give some type of indemnization to the population. What actually happened is that they did not, do the what we call the social responsibility, because they were supposed to, relocate those population that were occupying this land, try to give them other opportunity, other financial opportunity, so that they can sustain their family. And what I've seen was that the Malian government did not, accomplish its part of the contract, because it was specified in the contract that they were supposed to do that.
I would like to fully understand the research methodology that you like to follow. And if I look at the first paragraph, it appears that you rely on opinion surveys.
Yes.
Have you, in addition to these opinion surveys, done any qualitative or quantitative work in terms of trying to answer some of the negative
No.
elements?
No.
Because opinion surveys may very well be based on the ignorance
Yes.
of the people that have been interviewed. And I think what would really be crucial, particularly when it gets to the last 2 points here, extraction of resources from Africa, well, is there perhaps some form of exploitation? What I think would be incredibly interesting would be to take a number of contracts that the Chinese government and the African governments have entered into, look at the terms of these contracts, and that would make a very interesting way of collaboration between economists and lawyers, and see if some of the benefits of resource extraction might benefit the country in the short term, but at the cost of essentially giving away rights in the future that might be much more valuable. So I simply, I think you've done a wonderful job so far, but I would not rely on just opinion surveys to decide these questions.
Okay. So going over what you just say, so maybe I need to clarify how, going over this presentation. So basically, yes, there is a mix of what I have done as during my PhD and or as a researcher, and also presenting, survey from different sources, just to corroborate my findings. So going over the extraction of resources from Africa, I did look at the case of DRC with their deals that they have in the Katanga region. So what I actually did, because I truly wanted to see, if all those stereotypes were right. So what I did is that I took the investment codes of Angola, Nigeria, DRC, Mali, and see if what was in the investment code. So basically, all those countries do have investment code that actually states how any interested economic partner should operate when they come to do business. So what I did is that I look at all those 4 countries' investment code to see how it is, elaborate. So they have rules. So what I was particularly looking at was the labor rule. And all those countries have specific rules on how many high level, management, the percentage of, a manager, local manager that they should hire, how many local, just laborers they should hire. So all those countries has very specific investment code that somehow, strengthen their business with foreign partners. Then what I did is that I took a specific case in each of the country, in each countries, and I looked at the contract. So in the case of Mali, I have this joint venture contract between the government of Mali and China, a Chinese corporation. In the case of DRC, because it was actually related to extraction of natural resources, so I have somehow I was able to have in my hands the contract. So I compared. I did just the literature comparison between the contracts, what was in the contracts, and what the investment code actually, say. And I was disappointed. I was really disappointed and I was frustrated. Frustrated because as a I would say as a person or as a economist, I was frustrated because from those four countries, two countries actually did um, draw my attention: Angola and DRC. With Angola, when I look at the contract, every single rules were stated to protect the Angolan economy. It was talking in terms of trade, talking in terms of labor, talking in terms of even those materials that the Chinese sometimes bring from their country. Every single aspect was um, um, state to protect the Angolan economy. When I looked to the DRC case, it was the total opposite. So the investment code have some general rules about the the employment, because when you attract investment, one of the hidden goals is to create some type of employment, to create jobs, so that your population is not left out. At the end of my research, on looking at extraction of resources from Africa, I felt like the government of DRC just renounce to to um, to his people, if I may say, just renounce, because I feel like there is always this ambivalence between, I, as an African country, I'm looking to attract FDI. I'm looking to attract foreigners to come to invest in my country. And I, as a country, do not know if, in order to attract those investors, I need to give away a lot of things. And by giving away, you give away your population. You give away all, the outcome that they may have back. So yeah, taking jobs or business from locals, that point, if I may follow up, on the case of DRC, it also somehow joined what I was saying previously, because in the case of DRC, yes, the population was feeling like Chinese were taking the job away from them. But yes, because their government did not secure those jobs for them. So for me, it's the government which is not accountable for his population in that case. You cannot force. So over the year, what I've understand is that China is just doing business. Even though they have, this friendly rhetoric with win-win situation, friendship, mutual benefits. Yes, there is a mutual benefit. Yes, this is a win-win situation, but it's not balanced. China, it's not balanced. It's maybe a win-win situation, but it's not balanced. just like you were, talking about the long-term outcome. In the long term, it may be detrimental.
That doesn't bother me at all. This is what we call creative destruction. You have a more efficient producer. The informal sector is going to suffer in the short run, but that's positive. What my real question is whether in the long run some of these contracts should have been subjected to a code of good conduct. And in order to really answer this question, you need time.